Okay, so thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon to learn about QuickBooks 101 with our pro Damon Watkins. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen for all questions. Damon will also be stopping periodically throughout to ask for questions. So if you have one, please use the raise hand feature and I'll give the allow to talk permission. Otherwise, there's also a Q&A chat box that you can put your questions in and I'll remind Damon throughout the webinar. Okay, so for those of you that don't know who we are the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship Small Business Development Center. So this is a national program with over 1,000 locations. We specifically serve SLO County. We help stimulate economic growth through business development, and we are a proud partner of the Small Business Administration. So we provide professional, no cost, no obligation business consulting through one-on-one counseling sessions, training, webinars like this, and other resources. If you aren't a client and would like to be connected with a consultant, please use this bit.ly link at the bottom of the screen here, bit.ly/CIE-SBDC sign up. Okay, and big thank you to our sponsors today, the Small Business Administration and the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, and Maynard Cooper. So I'll play a little video from our sponsor, Maynard Cooper, to kick us off, and then Damon, you can take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamal Al-Haj, and I'm a partner with Maynard Cooper and Gale in the firm's San Francisco office. Maynard Cooper is a full-service law firm of national reach with over 300 lawyers across 11 offices coast to coast. Our San Francisco practice focuses on advising emerging growth companies and venture capital firms, including with respect to equity management, financings, employment, and intellectual property matters. We are extremely proud to be a Founder Circle sponsor amongst an extraordinary circle of other dedicated philanthropists who recognize the immense value that Cal Poly's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship bring to the SLO community. We hope that each of you enjoys this upcoming training and workshop and are able to incorporate the knowledge and know-how that will be presented shortly to further help grow, develop, and accelerate your businesses.
Okay, so without further ado, please welcome Damon Watkins to talk about QuickBooks 101. And I'll stop sharing screen so you can start yours.
Perfect. Let me share mine. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our QuickBooks 101 session this afternoon. My name is Damon Watkins. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations here at Cal Poly CIE. I have been working with QuickBooks for about the last 25 years in every capacity you can possibly imagine, and hoping that today's session will help you get more comfortable with utilizing QuickBooks. A couple of small things I like to go over before we get started in regards to QuickBooks as a whole. This program today is specifically a 101 session for QuickBooks. I basically come at it from the perspective that you've never used QuickBooks in your entire life. You literally just bought it and installed it on your computer, and we're about to step through the door and help you get set up with some basic and some more advanced requirements to get QuickBooks set up and running correctly. A couple of key points here in that regard. If you do have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to stop me by raising your hand. Alexi will go ahead and let me know. It's a lot easier for me to address questions and concerns that you may have as we proceed along the way. So again, I want to reiterate, please raise your hand if you have any questions regarding what we're talking about or anything that I'm going over currently. A couple of key items in regards to how this will proceed. I normally put 3 hours on the board because I like to actually do this particular session in person. But given the COVID situation going on currently right now, this is actually our 4th virtual session doing QuickBooks. With that said, it does tend to flow a little bit faster because we're not in person. So I don't expect this to take more than 2 hours, just depending on the level of inquiry and the questions that I get. I do like to leave time at the end to go over any specific questions that you might have relating to your business. One of the things I try not to do while I'm doing this coaching session is go too far down the rabbit hole with any particular one item relating maybe to your field or your particular company that you're running. It pulls everyone else off track. And so I kind of try to keep the focus on the overall perspective. With that said, at the end of this session, if you do want to have some one-on-one time with me in regards to answering some questions, we can certainly do that after the session. Also, if you have more in-depth questions, we can schedule a follow-up sit-down session with me downtown. I'm located downtown directly above Ross, and go over it in person, which tends to be a little bit more interactive, and I can get a better feel for some of the items that you're dealing with. With that said, and before I start, let me just give you a little background in regards to my experience with QuickBooks, and in particular, QuickBooks Desktop. Like I said, I've been working with QuickBooks for about 25 years now. I've run every kind of budget that you can possibly imagine through QuickBooks Desktop. Just to give you a perspective, the job before I joined Cal Poly, I worked for REC Solar, and I ran a $243 million budget out of QuickBooks Desktop for 3 years. So a lot of the time people ask me, is QuickBooks scalable? QuickBooks is absolutely scalable. Is it ideal to run that size of a budget through QuickBooks? No, it's not. I had over 900 employees that I was tracking and reporting in 16 different states. The point I'm trying to make here is that QuickBooks is very versatile in dealing with a number of financial related issues when it comes to your company. And many of these aspects can be taken care of if QuickBooks is set up and run correctly. One of the key points that you'll notice I highlight today as we proceed through this is QuickBooks is very much a mechanism of garbage in and garbage out. It can only produce the information that you put into it. And so it's vitally important that you take the time to ensure that you have set it up correctly. Now, I can't reiterate this enough. Taking the time to really understand your business and set up a really good GL so that you know you're tracking items on a specific line item basis will really serve you well in the long run. It'll also enable you to grow your company more effectively and track those financial expenses associated with that. And with that said, let's get started. So a couple of things that we're going to be going over today. So everything from setting up the home page, using the user centers, going over things like the forms that are utilized within QuickBooks, how to customize them, how to create sales receipts, how to create invoices, receive payments, make deposits, the bill tracker, the ability to write checks, enter bills, pay bills, homepage insights using the reporting center, the company snapshot, profit and loss, and balance sheet. So again, these are going to be the main focus of today's session, going over this. The one point I'd like to make just before we jump right into it, this is our beginners class. We do an intermediate class. This will be scheduled in about 3 months. And then I do an advanced tax reporting class closer to the end of the year. I'm hoping by that time we'll actually be able to do that class in person. It's quite an in-depth class, and I tried to do it last year virtually, and the traction with it, because of the level of detail that we're going into, doesn't necessarily always translate virtually. Please keep in mind that if you are interested in any of these classes, you could certainly go ahead and sign up. I believe Lexi has put the link up on the page in regards to the other sessions that we have out there. Please also be aware that any documentation that I go over today, I will be sending out afterwards. So if you're taking notes or screenshots or anything like that, you really don't have to worry about that. I will send this document out afterwards. I've used this guide multiple times in the past in training sessions, and I find it's the best way really to articulate the information out to everyone out there. With that said, I do like to pause for 1 second and see if anybody has any questions in regards to everything that I just went over before we jump in. Okay, great. So let's talk about QuickBooks. So most people who go over to QuickBooks are taking that next leap to really get a better idea of what is taking place with their company. A number of the businesses that come to me when they're starting to either set up QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online, which we do a class on as well, involves people either tracking their expenses in a spreadsheet or another third-party ERP system that they are currently using. And they currently don't feel that it's servicing their best needs, and they need something a little bit more advanced. That's where we come to QuickBooks Desktop. Now, primarily, we are going to be talking today about QuickBooks Desktop and the processes behind it. But many of these processes do lie in QuickBooks Online, and in my QuickBooks Online class, I do go over that. With that said, I will make a very, very clear distinction right now between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Desktop is vastly more versatile than QuickBooks Online. The ability to customize certain aspects of your business reporting, especially from a forecasting perspective, is vastly superior on QuickBooks Desktop. This is actually one of the primary motives for people who traditionally start with QuickBooks Online and then might migrate back to QuickBooks Desktop, because of the QuickBooks Desktop's ability to do substantially more customized reporting than what the QuickBooks Online. Now, not to say that QuickBooks Online can't, but again, you tend to find that the versatility of QuickBooks Desktop draws people back. A number of the teams that come through the hothouse starting up as businesses start out on QuickBooks Online. It's cheap, it's an expensive way to get your company up and running and tracking their expenses. What I tend to find happens is as they progress in growing their businesses and start to look into doing forecast projections from a cash flow perspective or a revenue perspective, that the QuickBooks Online perspective does not give them that. And a lot of the time they're dealing with investors that want to see a very specific reporting. I highlight this fact up front because most people tend to look at QuickBooks Online first because of its convenience, but I will reiterate again, the versatility of QuickBooks Desktop is a great advantage if you know that further down the line you're going to be looking at something like that. With that said, let's get started. So the very first thing you're going to have to do when you go ahead and install QuickBooks is set up the company file. Now, the company file is unique to your business. It will store all the data and information relating to everything that you've entered in QuickBooks. This is known as a QBD file, as opposed to a QBO file, which is a QuickBooks Online. These are two designations that differentiate between the QuickBooks Desktop version and the QuickBooks Online version. With that in mind, once you go ahead and set up the company file, the system will actually walk you through step by step, asking you specific questions to help you go ahead and get your business set up. Some of these key items that it will be looking for will be the tax ID number associated with your business. You'll need to go ahead and enter all relevant employees in the system and ensure that you have the payroll system set up correctly if you are utilizing QuickBooks Payroll. Again, the process of doing this is quite simple, and QuickBooks does a great job of walking you through this process step by step by step. So, once you get to that very first page, you're going to go ahead and click on Set Up Company File. From this point on, the system will prompt you for exactly what information you need to add to go ahead and get the company file set up. Once the company file is set up, the system will go ahead and let you into the home page, which is where you can start entering or uploading information into QuickBooks. So let's talk about the home page real quick. So one of the great aspects that I personally love about QuickBooks Desktop is the ability to import large Excel sheets. Why do I say that? Well, I think I mentioned in the beginning that a lot of companies come to me when they're at the point where they've been tracking their expenses and everything else that relates to their business on an Excel spreadsheet. And they've got 2 years worth of Excel spreadsheets, and they basically are asking, well, I've got all this data. Do I literally have to sit there and punch it all in? No, you don't. And no, you don't want to. One of the things that you will find about QuickBooks Desktop is the more information, the more processes that you can automate limits the human error factor that exists within QuickBooks Desktop. What do I mean by that? Well, unfortunately, we're all human, which means if you are entering 10,000 line item entries within QuickBooks, there is a percentage of those that will have a human error. It's about 0.3%. But if you have all that information in a spreadsheet, you can import that information way quicker than sitting there and punching all that information in. I will spend a little bit of time later on going over the two processes that can be used to bring that information in. But I do like to point it out at this point in time, as it is a big time saver to be able to input the information into the system, as opposed to having to go back and enter 2 years worth of financials in your brand new setup of QuickBooks Desktop. Okay, so the homepage. Now, the great thing about the homepage is in many ways, it's a roadmap to what's taking place within QuickBooks Desktop. It gives you direct access to all the reporting aspects, everything from AP, accounts payable, AR, accounts receivable, to your bank statements linked to QuickBooks Desktops, to the general ledger, to the chart of accounts, and everything else in between. If some of these designations don't make sense, don't worry. We will spend some time talking about them very specifically and going over key items that you will need to have to get your QuickBooks up and running effectively. So let's talk about the homepage. The homepage gives you a big picture of how your business tasks fit together. It opens automatically whenever you open the company file. So when you log into QuickBooks, this is actually the very first page that you're going to see come out. Now, the great part about this page is it's completely customizable to your needs. A lot of the time I get the comment that, well, I have all these icons and I'm only using a third of them. Great. You can go into the customization portion of this and customize the page specifically to what your needs may be out there. You can do all your tasks just using the menus. The menus contain the same task as the home page and more. So what you're seeing on front in the screen right now with the image in front of you with the icons is also on the left-hand side menu bar. This way, it makes it very easy and quick for you to go ahead and access the necessary information that you're looking for. The icon bar includes shortcuts to many parts of QuickBooks. To create your own shortcuts, just click on Customize Shortcuts. To customize the home page, choose the Edit Preference Desktop view from the top menu, and then click on the Company Preference tab. Go directly to the centers by clicking on this sections. So, again, a great tool. Take the time to go ahead and get familiar with this page. You're going to be seeing it a lot, and you're going to be using it even more. Make sure to take the time to customize it towards your needs so that you're not clicking on the wrong icon by accident. These can be great time savers as you proceed growing your business and moving forward. Now, one of the things I like to take a little bit of time and talk about here is some of the mistakes that are made during the initial setup of QuickBooks. The most common mistake I see is that people want to throw everything and the kitchen sink into QuickBooks. Well, what do you mean by that, Damon? Well, what I mean by that is when they go in, QuickBooks will actually set up for you basically what's known as a preliminary GL, giving you the relevant information on the screen for you to be able to tag items against. What tends to happen is people go into this and start setting up every kind of GL entry that they possibly imagine their company will encounter down the line. An example of this is a couple of years ago, I was working with a sales individual who asked me to help him set up his QuickBooks. He was keen to get all the relevant information in for the last 3 years worth of financials that he had, and he worked in sales in multiple states. And he was growing his business to eventually, hopefully, be a large percentage of the states within his sales business. At the time of him setting up his QuickBooks, though, he had decided to enter every state that he thought he might enter into QuickBooks at some point in the future. The problem with this is it blew his general ledger up and made his chart of accounts enormous. It ended up being something close to 1,000 lines. Now, that's great if you're utilizing all of those particular line items within your chart of accounts. But if you're not, you're making a lot of work for yourself when it comes to doing both data entry and then reconciling your GL at the end of the month. Please keep this in mind. Enter the items that are relevant to what your business is doing now. You can always go ahead and add items to both the chart of accounts or the general ledger at a later date, should you choose to. But really getting a good understanding of your chart of accounts is one of the key aspects of setting up QuickBooks well from the beginning and getting it to run effectively moving forward. Be really concise in what you're doing when you set these chart of accounts up. It will make the end of the month reconciliation a lot easier for you, and you'll find that your reporting will be a lot more accurate. The other side of it that you tend to encounter in these circumstances is once you have created one of these entries within your chart of accounts, you can always go in and disable it, but the information will still be there. So again, unless you specifically need that item within your chart of accounts, don't go ahead and enter it until the need is there, okay? One of the things that I also point out in this part in time is that once you have entered an item into your chart of accounts, do not delete it. The reason for this is simple. Once you've added one of those lines into the chart of account and information has been entered against it, if you delete the line item, the information will be lost. If you disable the line item, you will remove it from the chart of accounts, but you will not delete the line item. Again, these two items go hand in hand with setting up your chart of accounts and ensuring that you have a chart of accounts that works effectively for your business. If I give one piece of advice in regards to setting up QuickBooks desktops correctly, is to ensure that you have your chart of accounts set up correctly. With that said, we do go into a little bit more detail in my intermediate class on how to set up that chart of accounts. Please also be aware that the SBDC does have other QuickBooks consultants, including myself, that are more than willing to do a one-on-one coaching session on how to go about setting up a chart of accounts correctly within QuickBooks. Some of the details that might be specific to your business that we can't go into depth today, we can do in a one-on-one session. Please keep that in mind and don't hesitate to reach out to the SBDC if they can ever be of service. We are here to serve the local community, and that's one of our primary roles, and it's why we offer these classes. With that said, let's talk about using your centers. QuickBooks tracks and people and companies that you do business with in the centers. These are separate from QuickBooks Center for customers, vendors, and employees. Use the centers to manage the view of all information and transactions associated with your customers, vendors, and employees. All of the centers work the same way. This is one of the things I do like about the interaction within QuickBooks. We'll use the customer center to show you how they work. So right now we're basically looking at your customer lists and jobs that are in QuickBooks. These would have been either entered by yourself or uploaded into the system at this point in time. Now, this assumes that you've taken the time to set up QuickBooks from that first page that we talked about. You've entered any relevant or uploaded any relevant prior information into the system. You have gone ahead and validated that information, and now you're ready to move forward with either entering new customers or relevant data associated with a customer, whether it be an invoice to a customer or paying a bill. Well, Damon just mentioned validating information. This is a key component of the setup of QuickBooks. What do I mean by that? Well, one of the things you want to ensure, and I mentioned it briefly in the beginning, is the quality of information that you put into QuickBooks is going to be directly correlated with the information that you get out. If when you're bringing that information into your balance sheet, you want to make sure that that balance on that balance sheet, when you start day one, matches the information that you were pushing into QuickBooks. One of the easiest ways to go about doing that is whatever methodology that you are using to either input or manually enter into QuickBooks, ensure that those balances tie before you take the next step of entering any additional information into QuickBooks. If you do not, you are perpetuating a problem that you will have to deal with when you do your reconciliation, whether that's on a monthly, quarterly, or an annual basis. Please keep that in mind. You want to start in a place that you know is 100% accurate. Otherwise, from that point moving forward, you are only perpetuating inaccurate information. I can't reiterate enough, if you are bringing information into QuickBooks, to take the time again to ensure that that balance ties back to the balance on whatever spreadsheet or other ERP system you are utilizing. So let's take a look at the QuickBooks Customer Center. So QuickBooks lists the names in the centers on the left-hand side there. You can actually see it where it says customers and jobs. So let's talk about customers and jobs real quick. What designates or breaks out a customer and a job? Well, really, it depends on how you are structuring QuickBooks for your particular business. In this case, I'm going to use a construction company as an example. So in most cases, a construction company might be working on multiple locations under one job, in which case they would have the customer on the left-hand side and then beneath it, each specific job that they might be working on. Another example I would use in this case is I've worked with companies that utilize food trucks, where the overall business runs 3 separate food trucks, and each one of those are designated out as a job. These are some of the ways that QuickBooks is able to break out this information from you by a line item basis. The advantage to you is you are able to track each one at their location relative to the overall perspective or project that is taking place. So if you wish to see further details associated with these particular jobs, you can click on See All Transactions, and the system will prompt and show you on the right-hand side all the relevant transactions relating to either the job or the customer. As can be seen on this screen right now that I'm showing, you can reflect that this particular customer has a number of different items out there, everything from invoices to credits to sales orders. This way, QuickBooks is able to track each item by the job or the specific customer that it is associated with. When you click on the name on the left-hand side, their details show up here. Click here on the right-hand side to edit the name or information associated with that customer. So there's a ton of flexibility with QuickBooks to go back in at a later date and edit the relevant information for your customer. This could be anything from updating a telephone number to updating the terms associated with this particular this particular customer, and or updating something as simple as an email address. Again, very easy to do. All you need to do is click on the little pen on the top right-hand corner, which enables you to go in and customize or edit any information you have relating to your customers. Again, take the time to ensure that you are setting these up correctly and entering all relevant information relating to these companies. This will save you in the long run and not having to go back and constantly updating customer information. Many customers many businesses out there use a customer information form to be completed by their customer to ensure that they do get all relevant information into the system. Again, take the time to set it up correctly. It will save you in the long run. Moving on. Using the forms within QuickBooks. So here I'd like to stop and really just talk about how you build QuickBooks out relates specifically to your business. Some of the things that I will be talking about today might not necessarily relate to your specific type of business, but the versatility and the flexibility of QuickBooks Desktop will enable you to set it up specifically to your needs. All of your everyday QuickBooks tasks like invoicing, paying bills, and writing checks are done on forms. You can reach every form in QuickBooks from the home page on the menus. We'll use an invoice to show you how forms work. So currently we are looking at a customer menu for a specific customer, and we are about to go ahead and generate an invoice for a specific customer. Now, as you can see in the little yellow box on the top left-hand corner, use the arrow keys or the Find button to look for invoices you've already entered. Or conversely, click on the tabs on this ribbon to find everything you need on the form. Now, the ability to customize these forms specifically to your needs is one of the more versatile aspects of QuickBooks. With that said, you can go in and customize an invoice template to have your logo, a specific communication on there, and a number of different items. Take the time to make sure that these templates are set up correctly. They do use a word editing format so that you can go in and customize them specifically to what you are looking for your business. Again, this includes setting up your company logo, email address, contact information, and necessary terms associated with this particular customer. If you see an arrow, click it to select from a list. If you don't see what you need, select Add New. This is where you have the ability to quickly add a new customer or client to your QuickBooks so that you can generate an invoice. Now, let's not be doing these things too quick. Again, take the time to ensure that when you are setting up these customers, you have all the relevant information on hand to be able to do that. And that includes setting things up like specific net terms for your customers. Now, a number of times, this is an area that people battle with a little bit, and I will spend a little bit of time later showing you specifically how those net terms are set up. With that said, ensuring that you have the net terms set up for all your clients is key. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look on this screen right now under terms, it has net 30 terms, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all your customers are going to have net 30 terms. This particular net 30 is set up under the item list. Within my item list, which I will be showing you a little bit later, you would be able to set up multiple terms for multiple clients. So I might have a client who is net 10. Conversely speaking, I might have a client that's net 30. Setting these up beforehand so that once you go ahead and generate the new customer, all you have to do is designate what terms they are. But if they are not set up beforehand in your lists, this can take more time and lead to errors. When you are setting up a customer within QuickBooks, you do have the ability to specify their terms at a customer level. This is advantageous because when you go back into the customer to generate an invoice, the system will already know what the terms are. This is really important when it comes to forecasting and AR, accounts receivable. One of the things you're going to want to get familiar with once you have your QuickBooks up and running is the ability to manage cash flow. And a key component of managing cash flow within QuickBooks is having a very clear understanding of your terms. So I always like to stop here for a moment and just give an example of exactly what I'm talking about, because this can be a little confusing for the first-time users of QuickBooks. So the biggest hurdle that small businesses have to overcome in the first 3 years of going into business is cash flow. Cash is king for a reason. Cash is what keeps your doors open, it keeps your lights on, and enables you to be paying the bills. Having a clear understanding of the cash going out the door and the cash coming in the door is vital to not only the success of your company, but giving you the ability to expand and grow your company and knowing where you have the resources that you can invest back into your company. An example of this would be if you, as a vendor, buying from a vendor, let's just use an example. Let's say you're a flower company who buys glass vases for your flowers that you then sell to your customer. And you're a relatively new business and you don't have much credit history associated with your business. So the vendor that you are buying these glass vases from says to you, look, you don't have much credit history. I'm going to have to make your terms net 15. Well, that's fine for them to be paid in 15 days from the day that they send you the product. But your problem is your terms with all your customers are net 30. Now, when we go to look at accounts receivable and accounts payable, which if you're being responsible, you're reviewing on a weekly basis and a monthly basis, you would have a negative cash flow situation taking place. You're having to pay the bill for those vases 15 days before you're getting paid for those vases, creating a negative cash flow situation for you. Now, I will go over some tips that you can utilize to help you get better terms with your vendor as you do build the credit for your business. And once I get through the next 2 pages, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking how you can go about this. So one of the things that's vital here is with the terms perspective is as you do get into the more advanced sections of QuickBooks, whether it be from a cash forecasting perspective or even tracking your accounts receivable, you will start to get a better understanding of the cash that is coming in and the cash that's going out. One of the chores that I have on my desk every Monday morning in every business that I've worked at where I've utilized QuickBooks is that the first two reports I would run when I came in the door were my accounts receivable, what money I expect to see come in from my customers, and my accounts payable, the money that I know needs to go out the door this week. Having a clear understanding of what is taking place from a cash flow basis is vital to the success. And the terms that you set both your customers and the vendors up with are what most closely associated with this. Please keep these two items in mind as you proceed to set up both your customers and your vendors. Moving forward. Getting paid. The most important part of doing business is getting paid. That's bringing money in the door. If you're not getting paid, you can't pay the bills, you're not paying the employees, and you're not keeping the doors open and the lights on. So understanding very clearly what it takes to receive a payment. Now, all the methodologies that I'm going to show you to receive payments in today can be applied whether it's a check, a credit card, or even possibly cash, though it's very rare that we see it these days. Do keep that in mind as we proceed through this process, that all of these methodologies can be used for any one of these items. These days, most people pay by either a credit card or rarely even these days in checks. So keep that in mind as we talk about this. There are two main ways to record sales in QuickBooks. If your customer pays in full, use a sales receipt. However, if they still owe you money from the sale, use an invoice instead. So one of the items I'd like to talk about here is if you're using a sales receipt, I would stick with utilizing a sales receipt for your customers. I personally have a preference to utilize the invoicing section within QuickBooks to bill my customers and get paid by my customers. It's an easier methodology to track the invoice in this manner, as a lot of the times what you can find with customers is they will pay based on a line item. What do I mean by that? Well, you might invoice a customer for a certain amount of line items on an invoice, and they might push back and say, well, I received a broken product, or one of them was damaged, and I'm not willing to pay for that specific one. At which point in time, you can either generate a credit memo for the customer, or you can receive the payment and have the invoice be off by that amount, at which point in time we would utilize a credit memo internally to wash the specific item out of the system. The other thing to keep in mind here is that you can also use the sales order system to track exactly which of the items you have fulfilled for your customer. So if you have a customer that's looking for 5 different line items, but you only have 4 of those products in stock at that moment in time, you can go ahead and process those 4 items out to the customer. The system will track that you still have not fulfilled one of the line items. And when we get into the inventory side of things, this is where the inventory control system will be able to prompt you that it has received more inventory in, and you would then be able to go ahead and tag out or send out that 5th line item that was not currently in stock. Do keep that in mind that QuickBooks does have the ability to track from both an inventory perspective by utilizing the sales order system. Now, if you are using the inventory system within QuickBooks, it is much like anything else that we're going to be talking today. Take the time to set it up correctly. That way, the system will actually prompt you when a certain line item is dropping below a certain percentage that you have in inventory. Or you enter a sales order for a customer that you're looking to fulfill, but the system will prompt you that you do not have all the necessary items in inventory to fulfill that order. This way, you're able to forecast out some of what your customers' needs are. It also, from a forecasting reporting perspective, will give you an idea of the cyclical nature of your business. As an example, flowers tend to be more popular in the summers, and you're going to have more in stock than you are in winter. Again, taking the time to set these systems up correctly is key to your success in growing your company within QuickBooks. So let's talk about the sales receipt / invoicing system that can be used. So select a customer, tell QuickBooks what you are looking to sell, enter the quantity, QuickBooks fills in the price you entered and you can change it in here as well. So I'd like to stop right here and just talk about those items that you have in here. You've heard me reference the item list that can be utilized to set this up. I will take a little bit of time a little later to talk about the specific item list itself. Now, taking the time to set up your items within the item list is key. At this point in time, you can enter within the system the price that you paid for it, the markup that you are looking for, and how many you currently have in stock. This way, the system is able to track it internally for you and will prompt you at a point. It will also help when you're going to calculate out revenue from a reporting perspective. As the system, as QuickBooks will know what you paid for the item, it knows what the markup associated with the item is, and thus it knows what your profit margin is. This is a great tool as you grow your company and look to be forecasting out the following year. Utilizing these tools is a great methodology when you're talking to customers and possibly investors in your company, as these are some of the items that they will be looking for. Do keep in mind that even though these are preset and in there, you do have the ability to go in and modify those items as such if you wish to adjust either the price or the quantity. You do have the discretion to go in and do that. Creating an invoice. So probably the part that I spend the most time working with customers on is this section. And before we go too deep into the invoice section, I want to talk about a couple of other line items that you will see on this page associated with the invoicing aspect. So once you've gone ahead and added all the necessary items into the item list within QuickBooks, you are able to pull them down via the drop-down menu within each invoice. Now, if these items have been set up correctly, the rate will already be associated in there, as you can see in this case with the framing at $55. Now, this is a great tool to ensure that the lack of human error that we talked about taking place does not take place. These presets are locked into the system when you set those specific line items up. Again, you can go back in and modify it if you wish to. Take the time to make sure these are set up correctly and labeled correctly as well. The other thing that I like to talk about really quickly, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because I spent a lot of time in our intermediate class talking about taxes. But setting up tax accrual within QuickBooks is also key. Now, these days, QuickBooks has got to the point where it's actually able to pull in the necessary data to know what tax rate you should be accruing at. An example of this would be in this particular case. You can see that this particular customer is accruing at a 7.75%. Now, the key part about this is you do have to build the item itself into QuickBooks so that it accrues on both the state, the county, and the city level. This is key if you are doing tax reporting relating to taxable items within QuickBooks. Unfortunately, when it comes to the IRS, ignorance is not an excuse. Thankfully, QuickBooks has done a really good job of enabling you to track this very easily if it is set up correctly. Now, 15 years ago, you would have had to take that zip code in your customer's line item, go out, check what the tax rate is associated with that specific line item, and then break it down by state, county, and city. Understand that that 7.75% that you're seeing on the screen is made up of three components. Again, state, county, and city. And so ensuring that you are accruing correctly at those specific levels is key. When you go to do your reporting in the BOE, they are going to ask you for that breakout. If you have set it up correctly, and when you do your tax reporting, those line item accruals will show up within the system by those specific breakouts: state, county, and city. Again, ignorance is not an excuse when it comes to the IRS. So take the time to ensure that this is set up correctly. Again, we do spend more time in both my advanced tax reporting class and the intermediate class in regards to doing this. Okay, so let's talk about the customer invoice and what it takes to create an invoice. We're in the invoice section itself right now, so it's a matter of selecting the customer that we are looking to invoice. Tell QuickBooks what you are selling. You're going to hit that item list drop-down menu and select the specific item that you are looking to invoice at this point in time. The system already knows what you are charging per item, and you simply have to enter the quantity that you are looking to sell to the customer. Also notice on the far right-hand column, which says tax, you can designate whether this is a taxable or a non-taxable item. Again, take the time to get familiar with your business, what you're selling, and whether it is a taxable or a non-taxable item. Again, this can certainly help you in the long run from a cash position, as I've encountered numerous clients who perceive that they are selling a taxable item when they come to find out that it's not. I'm not going to go into the delineation between taxable and non-taxable, but if you want to schedule a time to sit down and meet regarding your business and how this relates to your business specifically, please let us know, as we do have QuickBooks and consultants who specialize in this specific area, including myself. So from here, we want to go ahead and enter the quantity associated with this specific line item. QuickBooks fills in the price for you entered when you set up that specific line item. From here, you can change it though, as I have stated earlier. From this point, if the customer is set up correctly, you have the ability to either print the invoice or to go ahead and email it directly out to the customer. At this point in time, I'd like to stop for a second, as I've thrown quite a bit of information at you, and see if anybody has any questions. Okay.
We've got a question from Ryan. Ryan, go ahead and talk.
Hi there. Yeah, I was wondering, for adding of users for the desktop version, can you add outside users such as CPA or whatnot to give them a view, or is it just since it's on your desktop, it won't allow?
Oh, great question. Great question, Ryan. Really great question. I encounter this quite a bit. So the answer to your question is yes. So the way QuickBooks works is that when you sign up for QuickBooks Desktop, you can get what's known as an individual user version, which is a desktop version solely utilized by you, or you can get a multi-user version. Now, these versions go from 1 to 3 to 5 to 10 and upwards. The ability here is that you can have multiple users logged into QuickBooks at the same time, pulling from the same QuickBooks desktop file. It also enables you to generate what's known as a CPA audit file. This enables you to pull the entire data file and send it to your CPA, whether it be on a monthly, weekly basis, depending on the frequency with which you interact with your CPA. The key aspect of this is it's known as a multi-user version. So that at any one point, you may be logged in generating an invoice, and you may have one of your employees in entering vendor invoices for you. So to answer your question, yes, you can utilize multiple users within QuickBooks. The only exception to this is you both cannot write to the same file at the same time. So if we're looking at my screen right now, if I was in this particular customer generating this particular invoice for him, whatever employee you had working would not be able to go in and invoice this customer at the same time. This enables QuickBooks to protect the files associated so you both are not writing to the same file at the same time. Does that answer your question, Ryan?
Yes, it does. And also, so does QuickBooks Desktop, does that sync with tie it to bank accounts as well? Similar
It
to
certainly does. It does. So one of the things that you can do is you can go into the banking section within QuickBooks and add not only your checking and savings accounts, but even credit cards in there as well to be able to track. So that way you can utilize those particular line items to pull the data directly from the bank when you're doing your reconsolidation. This is a great tool that can be utilized within QuickBooks. The particular part that I like about it more so than any other part is, let's just use an example that you have 3 users within here, Ryan, and 2 of them are employees of yours that are working within QuickBooks. You don't necessarily want to give those other 2 users access to the banking section. What you can do is customize the needs of each one of those profiles specifically. A great example of this is when I was working at REC Solar, I had about 30 individuals within my accounting department. A number of them were working on the AR side and a number of them were working on the AP side. As I built their profiles out, I would only allow them access to the sections that they needed to work on. So as an example, I may have an accounts payable clerk, but there's no need for me to give her direct access to the accounts receivable side. This is some of the flexibility that you do have within QuickBooks. It's also a great way of ensuring that you have the integrity within QuickBooks. You don't need your employees going ahead and looking at information that they do not need to see and they do not need to know. This is a great way also from a privacy perspective to control what is taking place within QuickBooks. And in turn, you're able to sync them up with these other outside institutions, whether it be your bank account, credit card, or even possibly a line of credit that you may have out there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does that answer that question? You're welcome. Any more questions? I love the question, guys. The more questions you ask, the more answers and the better idea of what direction we're looking to go. So keep them coming, raise your hand, and Alexi will prompt me so I can answer them for you. Last thing we said, we're printing and sending off our invoice to our customers, which is great because that means they're going to be paying us, which is great for keeping the lights on and the doors open. So moving forward. Receiving payments. So again, Ryan had asked me about the ability to customize it and build it out to have multi-users in there. This would be an area that's more associated with the accounts receivable side. You've sent an invoice out to a customer, they've sent a payment into you, you open the check up, you look at the check and you go, okay, great, where am I going to go? Well, you're going to go into the banking system. And from the banking system page, which you're seeing right here, you're going to go ahead and it will list out the open invoices associated with this particular customer. So when the customer pays you, use the receive payment form to apply it to the right invoice. You don't need to do this if you've entered your sales receipt. So at this point, I personally am assuming that everybody is invoicing. There's no actual reason to use a sales receipt unless you specifically have a purpose within your business to do it. Why do I say that? I steer people towards invoices more so than sales receipt because of the level of detail that is there. One of the key points that I like to make a point of right now as we proceed through this, and I should have mentioned it a little earlier when we were actually looking at the customer invoice, is the little paper clip that is at the top of the screen right there. This is a great tool within QuickBooks. It enables you to store associated documents, whether it be a vendor invoice, so a vendor sends you a bill that you enter into QuickBooks. You have the ability to then take that PDF or Word doc, whatever it is, and attach it to that customer invoice and save it. This is great if you want to store the information on hand, and then you can go ahead and dispose of that. I can't tell you how many businesses I walk into where they're running QuickBooks Desktop and they have cabinets upon cabinets upon cabinets of vendor invoices. The very first question I ask them is, why do you have all these invoices on hand from your vendors when you can simply attach them to the invoices that are currently in the system? Keep that in mind. This is a great tool. This can be used from everything from receiving a payment, a copy of the check, to billing a customer and attaching the associated supporting documentation that you may need by attaching the file. Conversely, a vendor may send you an invoice digitally through email that you can then simply attach to that vendor invoice. Do keep that in mind. So At this point in time, though, we're receiving a payment, and it looks like this particular individual decided to pay us with a check, as you can see with the designation with the green tag that is on the screen. Now, you could certainly use other methods such as cash, credit cards, and a wire possibly to receive those funds in. So what do we do first? We have to select the customer that we're receiving the payment for. As I stated before, the moment you select the customer, the system will bring up all the open invoices associated with that customer. You're then going to enter the amount for the check that you received from the customer with the date that you received it in and the check number. Now, in this case, there's only one open invoice, so the system automatically knew to tag that specific payment to that invoice. But do be aware, you may receive a payment that is less than the invoice amount, in which case you will still have an open due, or they'll send you a check for multiple invoices, that you would hope they would have broken out. You will simply go on here and tag the line items until the balance on the bottom matches the amount on the check. As you can see right here on the lower right-hand corner, the amount due, $3,114, and the amount to be applied, $3,114, washes this invoice completely out of the system. Once you have done this, all you need to do is hit save and close, and the system will go ahead and apply that payment against that invoice and close it out. A really simple process. But there are a couple of things that had to take place before we got here to make sure. And I know I've stated it already, but ensuring that you set the customer up correctly within the customer list, ensuring that you have the correct terms for those customers is vital to ensuring that this process is smooth and simple. From this point in time, you just hit save and close and move on to the next item. Making a deposit. So let's pause for a second and talk about how QuickBooks interacts with your bank. Ryan brought up a little earlier that asking if QuickBooks has the ability to sync with your bank, and it does. But one of the vital aspects of QuickBooks is the interaction between your bank and syncing with QuickBooks, and conversely speaking, the deposit process. So larger businesses tend to do their bank processing on a daily basis. I recommend for smaller and intermediate businesses not to do that. Why, Damon? Well, my recommendation here is that you go ahead and choose one specific day of the week that you are going ahead to do your final deposit to the bank. Now, as you receive payments in, as they are applied to the outstanding invoices within QuickBooks, they still remain in the open banking portion of QuickBooks, which means you may spend a day collecting payments and entered 5 different payments into the system against invoices. At the end of the day, you go back into the system and you notice that you have all of those payments in there, and then you want to go ahead and submit it to the bank. That information is then processed out and sent to the bank to finalize that deposit. Now, if you're doing that on a daily basis, know that it's going to make your life a little bit more difficult at the end of the month when you do your reconsolidation of your QuickBooks against your bank account. One of the things that I recommend you do, and in my case, I recommend depositing the final deposit every Friday. The reason for this is when you go to do your month-end reconsolidation, you will notice that the specific entries that you're reconsolidating with against the bank take place on Friday 4 times a month, as opposed to doing a daily deposit and having 20 different entries posting at the bank at the end of the month. This is a methodology that can be used to make it more concise to reconcile and ensure that you have all the relevant information in QuickBooks, and in turn, this ties back to what you have at your bank. Now, this is only a suggestion. If you're comfortable going in a daily basis and doing it, please do. But the part about this that I really want to emphasize is take the time to make sure that at the end of the month, you are reconsolidating the information and reconciling it with your bank statement. This is just a simple trick that can be used to go ahead and get that done quickly. I can't tell you how many times I have people who have set up QuickBooks, been using it for 2 or 3 years, come into the office and tell me that they have a major issue, they just can't figure it out. And the very first question I ask them is, how often do you reconcile? And the answer I normally get, never. The thing about it is, if you don't reconcile, you can't fix a small error very quickly. And a lot of the time, it's a simple thing as a human error. You missed a decimal point. You forgot to add a penny here or a penny there. These are easy things to catch on a monthly basis. But if you let this particular item, it will basically systemically grow to become a larger issue when you do have to do your year-end closing, because you're going to have to go back and dig and dig and dig to find that differential that's taking place to get it to balance out. Again, take the time to ensure that things tie out within QuickBooks. It's a key component of understanding your business and making sure that you're staying on top of these things. With that said, let's talk about what it takes to make a deposit. I'm not going to talk about sales receipts anymore. Like I stated before, we're simply going to be tagging these items against open invoices that we have. So after you receive a payment for an invoice, tell QuickBooks where to deposit the money. So one of the things that you can also do in here is have more than one bank account set up to receive that deposit. You may utilize specific or different bank accounts to receive the payments from your customers. You have the ability in QuickBooks to have more than one bank account listed. Please ensure that when you go in that you are tagging to the correct bank account to make that deposit. This is vital to ensure that the money is making it to the right place. So after you receive a payment for an invoice, tell QuickBooks where to deposit the money. The deposit record in QuickBooks should match the actual deposit you make at the bank. It may include multiple payments and or sales receipt for the day. So this goes back to my comment just a couple of minutes ago in designating a specific day of the week that you deposit your deposits to the bank. Just going to spend a little bit more time going into a little bit more detail in regards to this. So a lot of the time what tends to happen in my world is I would receive a number of payments via credit card that I would then go into the system, receive against the open invoices, but not make the bank deposit. Those same days, I'm receiving physical checks in my hand that I am going into the system and applying against open invoices. But I have two different types of transactions taking place. This is why on a Friday, I would go down to the bank and physically deposit the checks in my hand. I would then go back to the office and close out the weekly deposit. That way, when I get my bank statement, it will exactly match the deposit that I did in QuickBooks, will match what I took to the bank and deposited in conjunction with the credit card payments that I received. Again, I'm going to see 4 deposits going to the bank at 4 times a month, and I'm going to see 4 deposits taking place at QuickBooks. Those 4 entries on either side are easy to balance out. It makes life so much easier when you go to reconcile on a monthly basis. Please keep this in mind. I know we all want to get the money directly into the bank as quick as possible, and I completely understand if you want to use a different methodology. Just understand that if you do that, you need to be sure that you are reconciling at the end of the month to track exactly what is hitting the bank and exactly what is being tracked within QuickBooks. Take the time to make sure you're doing this. Okay, with that said, QuickBooks first lists any undeposited payments and sales receipts. So this is exactly what I was talking about when I said that we've received the payment in, we just haven't closed out the deposit to the bank. If this window doesn't open, you don't have any undeposited funds out there. So if you go back into on a Monday morning, after you've made that deposit on the Friday, you're not going to find anything in here because you haven't received any additional payments to then go ahead and deposit to the bank. Select the line items and click on K. Select the bank account you want the money to go to. This can be seen on the top left-hand corner there. This can be referenced by the name of the bank, the account number, or how you choose to set it up. Save the deposit. Enter the if there's any cash back received when depositing to the bank. So if you go to do a large deposit at the bank and then withdraw some cash, this is where you're going to input the offsetting line item within QuickBooks. Enter any additional monies to deposit. You have possibly cash on hand or anything additional that you're going to head and deposit. Print a deposit slip or a summary for your records. Again, I went about that in a little bit roundabout way, but I just want to be clear on the process that is used to make the deposit at the bank and then tie that deposit back to what is taking place in QuickBooks. Again, if you have a specific day of the week, or if you're doing it on a daily basis, ensure that the bank line item for that day matches exactly what QuickBooks shows you for that day as well. Okay, paying others. So the best part about it is receiving it in. The other side is that we have to send that money right back out. So we talked a little earlier about having a clear understanding of what your accounts receivable and your accounts payable are. This is your best way to manage the cash flow for your business and have a clear understanding of what direction your business is going. So let's talk about paying other people. In QuickBooks, you can track purchases in the write a checks, enter bills, or enter credit card charge windows. If you use a debit card, ATM, or electronic funds transfer, use the write check window to record the purchase. To track how much you owe, use the enter bill. When ready to pay that bill, use the pay bills window, not write check window, to go ahead and do this. So one of the things that's nice about QuickBooks from an accounts payables perspective is much like your receivables and the reports that you're able to run to show you what's coming in the door, the system can forecast out for you on the next weekly basis what your vendors expect to be paid on. Now, this is a great tool if you are trying to manage your cash flow position. So let's say that you're in the system right now and you notice that this week, you have to make a $5,000 payment. But you're noticing that your accounts receivable is less than that amount. This is your opportunity to then reach out to those vendors to say, can I push that payment off a week? Can I hold off paying you for a week or so? At least it gives you the control to clearly understand who you need to pay and prioritizing those tasks moving forward. Remember, this is one of the biggest aspects of small business failure is really not wrapping your arms around the cash flow that takes place within your business. Also understand, and I touched on it briefly earlier, that your business credit is vital to getting good terms with your vendors, which in turn enables you to manage and regulate your cash flow as a business. So let's pause there a real quick second and talk about what it takes to actually do that before I move forward with the bill tracker portion of it. As when we first started this, we talked about setting up the company file, making sure that you have a tax ID number, and all the necessary documentation to set your business up within QuickBooks. Let's talk about that tax ID number for a second. What is that tax ID? Well, it's an identification number solely associated with your business, establishing it as an entity. But the part about this entity is much like you and I have a credit history, so does this entity. And that entity is tied directly to that tax ID number. So how do you go about building credit for something that has no credit history? Well, credit is actually a reflection of debt. And to be correctly stated, credit is the ability to pay debt. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is if you are a brand new business that you've just registered with the Secretary of State, which is what it takes to get a tax ID number, you're going to walk down to your local bank and you're going to open a business account. And you're going to deposit $500 in there. And I'm using a round number. You can choose to do more, you can choose to do less. Then you're going to ask the bank to provide you with a secured credit card for your new business against that $500. The moment you do that, you are starting to build credit for your business. Now, you're going to take that card and you're going to utilize that card to pay for company expenses. This could be anything from paper to paying a bill, whatever you may choose. You're going to put that on the credit card. Once you make a payment to that credit card, you will have created credit history. Within 3 months, you will have enough credit history to go back to your vendors and possibly, I say possibly, renegotiate your terms. Because what a lot of businesses do when you go to them as a company, as a customer for a vendor, is they're going to run your credit history. No credit history means that you get less terms. Less terms means less risk for that vendor. But as you build credit history, the vendors are going to be more willing to give you better terms. So as you utilize and your company grows and utilizing that credit card, you will want to look to increase that line to a certain degree until you can secure an unsecured line of credit that would enable you to get a general credit card that you can utilize for your business. This is just a simple methodology that can be used to build credit for your business very quickly. The key part that I'm trying to make here is the association between credit history and terms, and thus the ability to manage cash flow. Ideally, as your business grows, you're going to get better terms with your vendor, which will enable you to manage and regulate your cash flow in turn. I'm going to pause there for a second because it is a big section, and in no guide that I've ever seen do they talk about this. But this part is vital to managing the cash flow and building credit history for your business. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, great. So, bill tracker. Keep on top of all your vendor-related expenses. To start, go to vendors and bill tracker. Click on any color bar to see only the expenses you want. So as you can see at the top there, they are broken out into specific categories to make it easier for you to see what is taking place. Click on the right-hand side or click here to group by vendor and quickly see how much you owe a particular vendor. So the system will actually break it out by the specific invoices that are outstanding, but you can also customize the view by an individual vendor that you are looking to see how much you owe. The lower left-hand corner, click here to save time by processing multiple expenses at once. So if you were looking to pay these bills either by electronically or via a check, this is where you would be able to designate the total amount that will be going out for these specific vendors. This is vital because you want to ensure that you have the relevant cash in the bank to be able to cover these expenses before you send them out. Again, understanding that relationship is key, and ensuring that what your bank reflects as the balance in there ties back to what is in QuickBooks. This is where you can struggle if you have not kept up to date on your deposits, and conversely, not kept up to date on the expenses side of it as well. Click here to make an immediate action on the selected expenses. So you can actually choose to do them all. You can go in and pick the specific line items that you want to pay at this point in time, or you can just use it as a reference point to know what you're looking at possibly for next week, next month, from a forecasting perspective. Writing checks. So at this point in time, you've selected a number of vendors that you are looking to pay for. Now, a number of businesses still use the check method to pay. And I get this question all the time, so I'm going to answer it right now. Why would you possibly still use checks? Great question, but it is another tool to manage your cash flow. As much as I hate to say it, when businesses first start out, cash is so tight. And sending out a check affords you the opportunity of having another 2 to 3 days to ensure that you have that balance at your bank account. This is not an ideal way to utilize the system to be paying your bills without money you don't have, but it is certainly a methodology that I have seen applied in the past. I am in no way condoning this, but I do want to be clear about why some businesses still write checks to pay for their bills. With that said, you would ideally have the money in the bank to cover that expense before you cut that check. Now, with that said, you can clearly see what the ending balance is in that checking account. And that's key because the system is pulling that data directly in. But again, if you are not reconciling your QuickBooks at the end of the month with your bank statements, this is where you can get into trouble. So let's talk about writing checks. On the previous screen, we had selected all the vendors that we were looking to pay. Now we're going to go about issuing out a check for these. A couple of key items that you want to keep in mind if you are writing a check and printing it on a printer is make sure that you get the check number correct. I can't tell you how many times I've come across businesses that run like 50 checks and they're off by 1 digit. This is key because the system will then pull the information in for each one of these checks when they're cashed so that you can know that information. But if it is not set up correctly and you input the incorrect check number, the system does not have the ability to do this. And yes, if you run 50 checks off 1 digit, you do have to go back and void all 50 checks. So take the time, if you are printing checks, to ensure that they are set up correctly with the correct date and the correct check number, and conversely, the correct banking account that they're routing through. Using the Write Checks window to record checks you print or write. So you do have the ability to go in here and also enter if you have handwritten a check, just as a side note. ATM withdrawals, debit card purchase, or electronic funds transfers. Don't use the Write Check window to pay bills you've entered or create paychecks. This is a big one. Let's keep the paycheck section of this discussion in the payroll side of the world. It completely interacts differently than an expense side of the world. And so don't, unless they are a contractor or a subcontractor, you really don't want to be paying salaries out through the expense side of it. Select the bank account where the money is coming from on that top left-hand corner. Select the payee. This is the person and or business that you will be paying. If you don't want to print this check later, uncheck the print later and then enter the number of the handwritten check. This does give you the ability, if you want to enter it but print them off at a later date, you do have the option to do that. Select the account to tell QuickBooks. If you bought inventory, use the item tab instead. So you will notice there on the lower left-hand side that we have expenses and we have items. This is where we talked about the inventory control system, which we haven't got into too deep, and we won't go into too deep today. But this is where the system has the ability to track certain expenses and items that you are buying or expensing out. The difference between an associated expense and an item is a physical asset that you are purchasing. The reason they are segregated in this manner is for tax purposes. Do keep that in mind. Enter the amount of the check and then save the check. Now, before you save the check, if you're just doing one check, you do have the ability to print that check right away. And in fact, once you hit the save and close, the system will prompt you for that. Entering bills. Okay, so now we are talking about the accounts payable side of things. So to enter a bill, to track how much you owe, use the Enter Bills window. Entering and paying a bill is a two-step process. First, enter the bill using Vendor Enter Bills. Then, to pay a bill, pay the bill using Vendor Pay Bills. Start by entering a bill. Select the vendor you need to pay. Enter the amount of the bill. Enter the terms or date, and QuickBooks will remind you when the bill is due. So this is where we talked about running your accounts payable every Monday morning to know exactly over the next 5 days who is expecting a payment from you. Do understand that there is a relationship between that credit history that we were talking about a little earlier and in building credit history for your business and you paying your bills on time. Vendors that you do not pay on time do have the ability to report you to the credit agency, which will in turn affect your business's credit, which in turn will affect the terms that your vendors are giving you, which in turn will affect your cash flow. This is the relationship that exists between terms and your credit history in QuickBooks. Do keep this in mind. Select an account for QuickBooks. Select an account to click QuickBooks. Tell QuickBooks what you bought. If you bought inventory, use the Item tab instead. So again, much like we talked about a little earlier, you can see the breakout designation in here from an expense to an item. Okay. A great example of this might be an electric bill, like is being utilized within here, which would be an expense, as opposed to buying paper for the printer, which would be an item. With that said, number 5, save the bill and close, and now it is tracked within the system. Pay bills. When you're ready to pay a bill, use the pay bill window. To start, go here, vendors, pay bills. Now, as you can see on the top left-hand corner, select the bill you want to pay. So in this case, we can see that we've designated a gas and electric bill, which would be considered an expense. At the bottom there, it shows the total balance that is residing at our checking account currently. And as you can see, it also specifies the payment date and the method of payment that is being utilized. So again, select the bill you want to, change the type if needed, select the payment method and account. QuickBooks shows you how much you have left in your account if you pay the selected bill. So what will reflect the balance after this payment has been made. Click here to pay the bill. This will then reduce that line item by the amount of that particular bill. So, kind of circling back to our home page now, we figured how to create an invoice, enter a bill, pay a bill. But now we really want to have an overall perspective of what is taking place for our business. How is my business doing? Where is money coming in? Where is money going out? And what does that relationship look like? This is something that QuickBooks does really well for you at a summary level. Again, the ability to generate custom reports in QuickBooks to give you more in-depth insight into your company's spending habits and or expenses is key too. And I would spend some time going into the reporting section and looking at the preset reports that are in there to be able to give you a better idea of what you're looking at. Homepage insights. Use the homepage insight to see exactly how your business is doing. To start, click on the Insight tab at the top of the home page. Place your cursor over the colored arrow for a quick look at the numbers, or click to see a more detailed report. Click here to add your company logo or any other references that you wish to use on this specific page. Click the arrows to move between panes. And as you can see, my eyesight is really going here, but you can see that it's already reflecting a total net income for you. Then you have your income line item and your expense line item. This gives you a clear understanding of where you are from a cash position, what cash you have going out, and what cash you have coming in. Again, understanding this relationship is key to a small business being successful. Click the gear icon to choose what shows on this page. So again, like we stated earlier on, you can customize this page to reflect whatever you want. There are a number of detailed settings in there to really get a good understanding of what's taking place with your company. And this is a great page to get a snapshot of where you are at and what is taking place with your business. Lower left-hand corner, instantly see your open and overdue receivables. Now, this is a great one because just as your vendors have an expectation to see what payments are coming in the door, you do as well. And QuickBooks enables you to see the outstanding items that are past due. These are the kind of items that you're going to want to pick up the phone or send an email to your customer to say, hey, when can I expect your payment? and you're going to probably get the proverbial the checks in the mail response. Still, having that understanding of invoices that are out there and invoices that are overdue is key to managing your cash flow. This enables you in turn to be proactive in the way that you approach this situation. Instantly see your open and overdue receivables. Click any colored bar to open the income tracker for more detail. Track where your money is going and where you might need to trim expenses. Click a colored section to see more. So one of the things that you'll start to notice is we spent some time earlier talking about the item list and setting that list up correctly. This is where you will get that granular detail showing from a snapshot perspective. This is great to getting your hands or wrapping your hands around your company's expenses and where you're spending money and where you need to look to cut to make your company successful. Again, these are great tools for growing companies because at the best of times, we don't always necessarily have clear insight into where our expenses lay. This is a great tool, if set up correctly, to be able to do that. Using the reporting center. So if you remember when we first started on the very first page, one of the things that I made a clear point about designating is the difference between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. By far, the single biggest difference between the two relates to the reporting center. Now, the reporting center on the desktop is very versatile, and there are a number of pre-configured reports already built into QuickBooks that you can simply go in and run. These relate from everything from customer receivables to sales, jobs, time, mileage, vendors, purchases, inventory, employees, payout and payroll, banking, accounting and taxes, budget and forecasts, and lists. With that said, that's not where it stops. The great part about QuickBooks reporting is that other companies have come in here and built customizable reports that you are able to search out. So if you're in a specific sector, we've talked about construction, we've talked about a flower agriculture company, you would actually be able to go in and search out reports that companies in those other sectors have already created and run, and be able to run them and see how your company's data reflects within those reports. You are also able to customize any one of those reports with a multitude of customizable sections within the customizable reporting section. This is a fantastic tool. I cannot overstate how effective and well set up the reporting section is within QuickBooks. Again, the pre-configured ones are fantastic if you're just starting out, but as you get more advanced and you want to start looking at things like income statements, profit and loss, these are great tools for you to be able to see clear insight into where your business is, and more importantly, forecasting out what it looks like for future years, looking to grow and invest in your company. Also keep in mind that when you are looking as a business to grow and possibly have investment, these are the kinds of reports that investors will be looking for to go ahead and invest in your company. Keep that in mind. Again, I can't tell you a number of teams that come through the hothouse, which is where I work, through the accelerator program that start off with the online version and 2 to 3 years later come back to me and want to jump onto the desktop version. And it's almost exclusively at times due to the ability of the customizable reporting and the versatility that QuickBooks has. Again, there are a number of other areas that the desktop system is more versatile than the online system, but the biggest draw I see is with the ability to build customized reporting. Again, not for everyone, but something to keep in mind. So, all of the QuickBooks information can be found and organized and presented as a report. QuickBooks has more than 100 reports, and the Report Center makes it easy to find the right ones. To start, go here to the Reports and the Report Center. Choose the type of report that you are looking for. View your memorized and favorite reports along with the reports contributed by other QuickBooks users. Click these icons to change how QuickBooks displays the list of reports. So one of the things that's nice in here is you can actually see that little heart. You can make certain reports your favorites, just like you have a favorite section within your internet browser. You can go ahead and do the very same thing within the reporting section so that when you go back, it will actually have a list of just your favorite reports, making it easier to find and to run them. Run the report, read the questions this report answers about your business. Make the report as a favorite by clicking on the heart. Get more information about the report. This also gives you the ability to go in and customize that report. Say you find a report that you really like, but you want to customize it more so to your business. QuickBooks Reporting Center gives you the ability to do that very, very easily. I'm going to pause there for a second because this tends to be a big section for certain individuals and not so much for others, but I do like to ask if anyone has any questions. Wow, you guys are going to make this easy on me today, huh? Moving forward to the next page. Customer snapshot. So the customer snapshot uses the company snapshot to get a real-time company information and perform tasks from a single pane. So really, similar to the home page, this is more a financial snapshot of exactly where your company is at the specific date and time. All the information on there is real time, so it's pulled directly from the chart of accounts and your GL. With that said, to start, go here, company snapshot. This is a snapshot of the money going in and out of your business over time. Use this section to compare monthly income and expenses. Another great tool to build out a forecasting perspective for your business. Click here to learn how to customize that company snapshot. Much like everything else within QuickBooks, you do have the ability to customize this page to specifically what you want to see when you get here. It all might relate to the business or the sector that you're in and the relevant information that you want to see on this page. See what your customer owes you. Lower left-hand corner. Account balances include all bank accounts, receivable, accounts payable, credit card, assets, liabilities, and equity accounts. This section shows your top 5 customers based on sale for a given period. Again, that's customizable, and you can change that to reflect 10 customers, 20 customers. Again, the customized portion of this is key to setting it up to meet your needs. Compare how much you spent this year to the same period last year. Another great tool to keep your costs under control as your business grows. Profit and loss, my favorite report of all. So in many ways, I find that the profit and loss report is the best representation of exactly what is taking place with your business now, where expenses are lying, and what category they fall under. It's the clearest picture of where your company sits from a net income perspective and gives you clear line-by-line breakout of where expenses are hitting. This report is also known as an income statement. It summarizes your income and expenses for a particular period so that you can tell whether you are operating at a profit and or a loss. To start, go here. Go to Reports, Company File, Profit and Loss Standard. Again, much like everything else we've talked about, you can specify the period, the time, and the duration of what you are looking to run this report on. In this case, it's at the top left-hand corner. You can see that we are looking at month to date, and the specified date range is from 12/1 of 21 to 12/15 of 21. Do keep in mind that you can extend that range out or conversely contract that range depending on what you are looking at. Click here to customize the report, as I just stated. If you have customized the report and want to use it again, click here on the Memorize. So much like you could save a favorite within the reporting, you have the ability here to memorize a specific report, thus configuring a report, saving it, and going back in without having to re-customize that specific report. This report shows totals for each income or expense account in your chart of accounts. Double click on the subtotals to see the transactions that make up this amount. So this is a great tool where you can see the specific line items. In this case, we're looking at payroll expenses, and you can see the gross wages that is reflected on the screen here. If I wanted to see the granular detail that made up that 13,000, I would be able to click on it and break it out to show each individual that makes up that total. This report shows the totals for each income or expense account in your chart accounts field. Double click on the subtotals to see the transactions that make up that amount. See your net income or loss for the report period as listed on the bottom there. So in many ways, this, like I said, is my favorite report in QuickBooks that you can generate from a snapshot perspective. A lot of the other ones have bright colored screens that are nice to look at, but this is by far the most concise report that you can run for your business to get a clear understanding if you're making money or losing money, which at the end of the day is one of the most important aspects of building a successful company. Balance sheet. So the offset to the profit and loss is the balance sheet. This report provides a financial snapshot of your company at a specific day. So one of the things that's great about the balance sheet is it gives you a specific date and time and where your company is at and what has taken place from it. It lists everything from the current assets that you have to all the liabilities that you currently have. And it's broken out into those two sections. The upper half of this report lists all the assets that the company has. The lower half reflects all the liabilities and equity that your company has. Again, in conjunction with the profit and loss, this is a great report to have a clear understanding of where your business is at from both an asset and liability perspective, as opposed to the profit and loss, which shows where your company is at from a financial perspective, whether it's making money or losing money. Do understand the relationship between these two particular reports. As stated before, go to the report section, company file and financials, click on balance sheet standard. Assets are everything that your business owns, including money that is owed to you. So this would include things like your accounts receivable. Liabilities are everything that your business owes. This includes bills that you need to pay. Equity is similar to an individual's net worth. It's what your company owns minus what it owes. So again, a great snapshot of where your business is at from an overall perspective. I would certainly recommend that you take the time to get familiar with both of these particular sheets that are reflected in QuickBooks. It's probably the two most common reports that are run, but it gives you the most insight to exactly where your business is at. I do want to pause here because I sometimes do get a few questions relating to both the balance sheet and the profit and loss report. So I'm going to pause for a second to see if you guys have any questions. Okay. I'm just flying through this today. You only have 2 more slides left, in fact. So, keyboard shortcuts. So, much like anything else out there, you're going to get used to interacting with QuickBooks and jumping from one screen to another and jumping from one location to another. The keyboard shortcuts that QuickBooks utilizes are really, really helpful. Now, I will say this. Unless you're a pretty hardcore user of QuickBooks, you're probably not going to use all of these on a daily basis. With that said, if you are the primary data entry individual for your business or you're running your own business by yourself, these can be very, very helpful to maneuver within QuickBooks quickly. There is a lot that takes place, and what you will tend to happen is within QuickBooks, you can have multiple windows open. So you might have one window open where it's a customer that you are looking to send an invoice, You might have another window open that has a vendor that you're looking to enter a bill on. You may have a payroll page open because you're tracking hours for an employee. And you may have a third window where you're running reports to generate what your accounts payable is due for next week. Being able to switch between those windows quickly and knowing the shortcut keys to get there can be very, very helpful as you maneuver around QuickBooks. One of the things I recommend to people is kind of look at these shortcuts and utilize the ones that are specific to the area that you work in. So as an example, if you were to work in the accounts payable area, you would use those specific keys relating to the entries there. Again, print it off, get familiar with them. They are helpful as you get to utilize QuickBooks more and more. And that's really all I have for today. Do realize that I will be sending this document out. I did notice there was some, looked like letter stacking taking place. I don't know if that was a PowerPoint thing. I will be sending this document out in PDF fashion to everyone. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, gladly respond to me in my email. With that said, we have about 50 minutes before the initial closing session here. I'm going to open it up to general questions from anybody. If there's a specific area that you'd like me to go back and talk a little bit more about, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. I can gladly do. We do have some extra time right now. If there are any other items that you are looking for me to talk about or have any additional questions about the intermediate, advanced class, or even the online class, now is your opportunity to raise your hands and ask. Again, this is the QuickBooks 101, so it's a very beginner's phase of QuickBooks. I do spend a lot more time going into a lot more detail in our intermediate class, but I also do appreciate the feedback that comes along with these classes as well. Understand that I base a lot of these classes on the classes that I've done in the past and the feedback that I receive. And so if I'm not addressing a certain section or you feel there's an area that I could focus on a little bit more, I do appreciate the feedback coming my way. With that said, I'm going to open it up to any questions that are out there that anybody might have.
Perfect. We have a question from Ryan, so I'll let him talk.
Okay. Go for it, Ryan.
Okay. In regards to using QuickBooks for payroll and then for employees and then cutting checks and direct deposits, I guess that's one question, whether that can be done. And then second was on the front end, does QuickBooks talk to other time tracking apps like such as ClockShark?
So first question. So yes, I didn't go too deep into, in fact, I barely touched on payroll today, but yes, QuickBooks has a whole payroll section built into it. There's two sides to it though. There's the payroll side where let's just say you're a one-person QuickBooks business that you're using QuickBooks Desktop. You have the ability to go in and set yourself up in there, enter your hours in there, have the system track and accrue it for you, and then be able to pay yourself on a bi-weekly, monthly basis, whatever that schedule you've had set up for you. And yes, it does link to your bank account and have the ability to then direct deposit to your bank account. You can also do this if you have multiple employees that you want to run the payroll for. And when I say you run the payroll, I mean you're doing the data entry for the specific employees to then go and generate, let's say you have 3 employees, three paychecks for those employees that are then direct deposited to the bank for you. Understand that on that side of it, you are responsible to make sure that the accruals are set up correctly, that you are tracking and reporting to the correct entities associated with payroll. Now, that puts more responsibility on you, but QuickBooks Desktop does have a module within it that you do have to pay for. It's a premium that can be added on, where QuickBooks will actually do it for you automatically, whereby all you have to do is simply provide them with the W-9 that is utilized to set the employee up, and in turn report the hours for the period that you are looking. They do all the calculations for you. They do the deposit to the employee's account, and then they do all the associated tax reporting associated with payroll. So they can do both. It just depends, number one, on the size of your company, the amount of employees, and whether you want to use the automated side, which QuickBooks helps you manage, or you want to do it individually. Again, on either side, the system has the ability to directly deposit to your employees' accounts. What was the other part of that question, Ryan? Did I touch on both there?
On the front end, to get those hours, does QuickBooks talk to other time tracking apps, for employees to use?
Yeah, it does. So that's actually where it does, but not on the manual side of it, whereby you would, if you got the module side of it, QuickBooks actually physically has a little app that goes on your phone. You can utilize theirs, but it does interact with third-party apps as well. And actually, if you go to the QuickBooks desktop website, the Intuit website, it'll have a list of all the companies that it does directly interact with and pull the time reporting for. So
Perfect.
Yes.
And that's still on the desktop feature.
That is still on the desktop feature, yes. One of the things that they're going to within QuickBooks that has been this little bit of a migration over the last 2 years is they very much are starting to make sections within both the desktop and the online modular. So you can choose to have them come in and take over, for example, payroll reporting for you. And you can just have that add-on module that you can add to QuickBooks Desktop that enables you to automate the payroll process and in turn interact with these third parties. Do note, though, that it is an add-on expense to do that. I can't tell you exactly what it is because it depends on the app that is being utilized or the company that is pulling that information from.
Got it. Okay. Great.
Great.
Yeah. The other one was, does QuickBooks have templates set up for cost coding? And I'm assuming by certain industries.
So when you say cost coding, give me a little bit more detail.
So like, for instance,
give me an example.
Example would be, we get an invoice that comes in and for instance, I would want it to have it coded for materials versus equipment, and so having,
it does. It does. So this is where you would build out that item list that we talked about. So let's say that within that item list, we have a designation of 001 and 002. You would be able to specifically break out whether it is a specific item that you want to track or a specific expense that you want to track within that line item. All you would have to do then is drop down the menu, that drop down menu that we talked about, and basically tag it to it. It would all involve how detailed the item list is that you would set up within QuickBooks. But that item list can be as long and as many items and or expenses that you want it to be. So yes. Did that answer your question? Do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, I knew it could do it. I was just wondering, do they have, like, instead of me coming up with all the buckets that things should go in, do they have any kind of setup ones?
They do. So they do have a generic template in there that you can go in and kind of customize to it, but it's a really general list in there. What I would do and what I've recommended, and I should have talked about this a little bit earlier on, one of the great parts about QuickBooks is it probably has one of the largest support bases within its forum than I've ever seen. So I will tell you that whenever I have a question, I go to the QuickBook forum page, and I can tell you I've put questions in there that there was no way, unless you were a really high-end CPA, that you would know how to answer. And I would get answers within minutes in there. And the point I'm trying to make here is it is a fantastic resource if you are talking about some of the things that you're talking about, Ryan, because what you'll find is, yes, that item list in there is very generic and it's not going to give you the template that you're looking for. But I recommend going into the forums and typing in either the sector or the area that your business lies in, and you will find that there are multiple people before you that have either posed the same question and the support group has provided them with the templates. Now, does QuickBooks itself have specific templates for specific sectors? No, it does not. That's where you have to do a little bit of your due diligence on that side. With that said, if you utilize the form that I just talked about, I can honestly tell you, you're probably going to get your best answer right there.
Perfect. No, good to know.
Yeah, I really, really would like to highlight the forum section with it into it. It honestly, if I personally have any questions or I come across something that I can't answer, and I have direct links to Intuit because they actually fund part of our program here as an educational program. So technically I could actually go back to Intuit and ask them. The first place I go is the forum. And I would tell you 99% of the time I've been able to get my answer there.
Great, great. And then one more question on the transition from QuickBooks Online to desktop. Is that a pretty simple project
No.
or one where I need to have a private session?
You know, the answer to that question is yes. You do need a private section. So one of the things, and actually I'm one of the individuals that's been fighting this, is QuickBooks Intuit, I should say, has made it very, very easy to transition from desktop to online, but has made it very daunting to transfer from online back to desktop. So it can be done. There is a methodology to do it. Unfortunately, it also depends on what kind of computer you're using. It is a lot simpler on a Windows system to migrate back from online to desktop. There is no set methodology right now to transfer, at least from Intuit's perspective, to go from a Mac online back to a Mac desktop. Now, I actually have worked with two companies that came through our accelerator program who started out on Mac online, and we had to come up with a process to get them over. So it is doable, but if you are going to do that and you're dealing with Mac specifically, I would recommend that you set up an appointment with me or one of our consultants so we can sit down and go through it with you in a little bit more detail.
Great, great. Yeah, no, it's Windows, so.
Actually, Windows is the process that I have. You can actually look it up. It's pretty simple. With that said, Ryan, if you are not comfortable and just have some more questions, don't hesitate to pick up the phone, give me a call, shoot me an email, or even come in and sit down with me and we can go through it together.
Awesome.
Keep them coming, guys. I love it. The more questions I get, the more I can help you guys out. That's what today is all about. And great questions, Ryan. I appreciate it. Anybody else? As I said, I work directly with the SBDC. I'm actually employed by Cal Poly, but part of my responsibility is on the community side because we are a community-facing entity here. We're supported by both the county and the city and the SBDC itself. So a big part of our job here is to serve the local community. I just want to highlight that small business is the lifeblood of our small community. It's not the big guys that pay the bills. It's the small guys that generate jobs and keep our local community where it is. I'm passionate about supporting small businesses and helping keeping small businesses alive here in San Luis Obispo. So again, if we can be of any assistance to you guys out there, don't hesitate to reach out to the SBDC or myself over here in regards to QuickBooks. Again, this is what we are here for, and we are passionate about small businesses and helping you become successful these days. With that, I will pass it back to Alexi just to follow up and close this out for the day. It was a pleasure doing this. You probably will receive a survey in regards to this particular session. Please give me your feedback. Again, I can only improve upon these sessions based on your input. Based on Ryan's question, I'll be adding a little bit more into both the item list section and the payroll section because it seems like I need to add a little bit more content there. So again, please, that feedback is greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to the SBDC. It's all yours, Lexi.
All right, so thanks, Damon. That was really great. Reminder, we'll send out a recording and a survey like Damon mentioned. And I think, Damon, you're sending your slides out too.
I'm going to send that slide deck out as a PDF to everyone as well so that they can read it over. And again, guys, once you get it and you have any more questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Awesome. Okay, so quick closing comments. We have some upcoming events. First, we have our big annual event, AngelCon. It's June 10th, 4 to 6 p.m. You can watch 6 startups compete for $130,000. It's really great. I'll put the link in the chat for you guys so you can register for that. And then next webinar we have will be Coffee and Conversation. It's with the AngelCon investors, so you can see kind of their process, how they picked the winner, just the whole process of AngelCon. And I will put those, if I can find the chat. There we go. Okay, so links for that are in the chat. Other than that, thanks so much for joining us today. Damon, great talk, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.